Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 2nd of September, 2021. I was expecting more from 2021, frankly, but I suppose all of you were. I hope everybody's doing well. Things are proceeding apace. I did a lot of kind of sitting in other chairs lately. Just in the last week, I've done a Newsmax. I did the Babylon Bee podcast yesterday, which hasn't aired yet. And I did the Mike Rowe podcast, which was a lot of fun. I'll get that link up there today or tonight. In any event, I thought it was really, really, really fun. And the one with Mike Rowe was just absolutely a pleasure, just a real joy. I got really nice comments back from the producer and Mike and Mike or the producer Chuck, or both of them, wrote a lot of introduction based on what we did in the interview. But it was fun talking movies with Mike Rowe, among other things, and I really, really had a good time. He is, as you can tell, he is exactly the same way in real life. He's got to be the most personable person I know. And furthermore, I was a little disappointed only in the fact that, as before, with the Daily Wire stuff, there was they're just running they did the video. Let me zoom in just a little bit here, as sort of a tease for the podcast. And the only problem with the podcast is that I think there must have been 25 times when I would say something and Mike Rowe would just kick his head back and just laugh with his head back laughing. And I don't know whether they cut his audio on that or whether he does that silently. In any event, it does lose a little bit of the sparkle. But nevertheless, with all that said, it was an absolute joy. And I can't wait to do more with him. He asked me what I was doing at the end of it, and I told him I was working on some animation stuff, and he said, I want to be a part of it. And I said, okay. So it just couldn't be a nicer guy. So I will get that up on the website as soon as we're done with this. Let's see. Not really a whole lot else to say other than today with Zoe, we did a segment about initiative. I have just been disgusting watching the stuff in Afghanistan, and in the last couple days, we're starting to get word that two things really happened. That were hopeful little glimmers of light in the darkness. One of them is that a number of soldiers, I don't know if we know how many, just flat out refused to obey that order to turn Americans away. That was a relief. And then the thing that really blew my mind was, although it didn't blow my mind, was, and I hope this story comes out someday, maybe it'd be fun to tell it, but reports are that hundreds of people were gotten out of Afghanistan by private citizens, by just largely on the ground by former U.S. servicemen who were special forces guys mostly, but basically Americans just went over there and got people out, not with the aid of the U.S. military, but in spite of them. Yes, I put down a correction on the fact that guy looked like he was hanging him. It was something that the Taliban was known to do from the helicopter. Turns out he was just going for a joyride, which is not something I would do even with an American pilot. But nevertheless, there you go. But the fact that we were able to just simply do that is, as I talked about a lot on the show, which we recorded just a couple hours ago, and which you'll see in a day or two, that is so essentially American, this initiative, the ability to act without instructions, and then the ability to go and do things where you can't do them by the book because there is no book. all of the great improvisational moments, in American history. The Apollo 13 obviously comes to mind, and the actions on board Flight 93 on 9/11, which was 20 years ago in just a few days, in a week or so. That initiative it's just so American, and it's so important. And when I heard that we were doing that, I was thinking, good, maybe they'll get a couple people out. I glanced at a report that said there may be hundreds that they got out. And I have no doubt that they'll keep continuing to do that. In fact, there'll probably be Americans on the ground in Afghanistan trying to rescue Americans from Afghanistan when Joe Biden is doing his 9/11 photo op talking about how he got everybody out of Afghanistan. I'd pretty much be willing to bet you that as he's talking, there will be Americans on the ground with weapons looking for other Americans on the ground. And I was just so pleased by that. And I do have another story to tell before we get to the questions, which is extremely good news, extremely hopeful. But I just had to comment on this idea that, apparently now Biden is saying, no, it's calling it the Great Escape. It's a masterpiece of military finesse and American, technical and logistical skill. And when I heard that, I kept thinking to myself, how hard can you compress this spring before it starts to push back? Hard enough to overcome the forces pushing it down. I see in the comment section, Helios says, one group not government affiliated, mostly former special forces, has gotten over 12,000 out. If you have a link to that or anything, Helios, I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. In any event, that was really in precisely the same way that Flight 93 was a bright speck in a sea of awfulness. It's something to hang on to. And when Joe Biden talked about it already being the greatest airlift in American history, I'm thinking, you've never heard of the Berlin Airlift, have you? The segment I did on the Cold War, Berlin Airlift was either episode 1 or 2, and I'd obviously heard about it since I was a little kid because I got an education. But when I got the details of what they actually were able to pull off on the Berlin Airlift, it was amazing. And it wasn't just 2 weeks, and it wasn't with all this modern technology. They were landing planes in Berlin every 30 seconds. So anyway, and remember, they're landing planes in Berlin in instrument conditions with no ILS, no GPS, nothing. They're just doing it, and it was utterly fantastic. So here's the good news. I was watching a couple of Mark Dice videos. I watched one last night or this. Yeah, I think maybe last night or this morning. Watch another one later on today. I don't usually watch other people's videos, but if I'm going to, it's usually Mark Dice because they're relatively concise and quick and kind of easily, I don't know. That's what I do occasionally. So on the first show I saw of the two, Mark showed a video that was taken by Project Veritas by James O'Keefe of this communist professor up in, I think it was in Sacramento, certainly in California. And it's undercover footage, and he's out at lunch with O'Keefe's undercover agent, who had undoubtedly made friends with this guy by talking about the glorious workers' revolution. So, on camera, this guy is basically saying, yes, of course I indoctrinate these kids. I forget what the number is. I've only got 120 days to turn them into communists, And he gives them extra credit for going to Antifa rallies. And when somebody had a problem with it, somebody said this is not really appropriate to have an Antifa flag in the classroom, he said, well, we're about anti-fascism, so does that mean you're pro-fascist? Words to that effect. Nice thing to say to a student and a kid. So that video was followed by an interview that one of James's reporters did, watching this guy walking down the street with a big hammer and sickle, huge hammer and sickle. and a little cap with a red star, and he was asking him questions about what he'd seen on the hidden camera video, and you could tell that this professor was kind of, not so pleased about the spotlight. So that was the first video I saw. And I left that first video thinking, well, hopefully something will come of this. Hopefully he'll be fired. I'm not counting on it. And then I saw the second one. Apparently, James O'Keefe released that video in time so that the day after that video was released was a school board meeting. And I want to say it was Sacramento, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And I saw something that has made me more hopeful than any time I've been in the last 10 years. Because in the second video, they showed just highlights of, and by the way, bears mentioning, Tom Bombadil says, and this communist professor says, the way I do that is to just scare the living F out of him. So O'Keefe releases this video the day before the school board meeting for that particular school precinct. And parents are there. Natomas in northern Sacramento, thanks. And the parents are angry. And I thought this was going to be kind of well, this is an outrage. No, they're not. They're not that kind of angry. They're like, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna put people on rails and tar and feather them and run them out of town angry. And I mean angry. And just one after another, these parents are getting up there and they're saying, how dare you put this garbage into our heads? And one guy's saying, I've worked in the Soviet Union, I've worked with victims of communism, this is deadly poison, it's killed millions of people, and you're putting this into our children. And then he's getting more and more worked up, just like I do. And he's more and more angry. Yeah, Pearl Harbor angry, Dave, exactly. Pearl Harbor angry. And he starts yelling, and everybody's cheering him on. And then this woman gets up there and says, oh, now I know why my daughter, in the space of mere 14 days, has completely changed from everything that I believe in into everything I hate. And then another woman got up and said she grew up in Venezuela, and she's not going to let Venezuela come here. And they are so angry that the school board said, a motion to have a 5-minute recess. And you can hear these like 3 or 4 school board members saying, seconded. And then the people, the same guys as in the Constitution people, those people, we the people, realize that these guys are getting ready to bug out. So they start screaming, you can't leave, you cowards, get back into the chair. Mark Dice said he usually bleeps out obscenities, and I do too. And he ran the unbleeped version. I personally didn't hear any obscenities. I'm sure they were there, but in any event, these people are absolutely 100% really, 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 really angry. And that was as good as I felt, because what those parents did was they actually chased the school board out of that meeting. Chased them out of the meeting. And chased them running out of the meeting. And I just was so enormously gratified to see this. Just so gratified to see this. And a number of them made a couple of interesting points. One of them said, I want this person fired. He's already fired. You know why he's fired? He's fired because you got caught. I want to know what where the principal was. Where was the vice principal? How long has this been going on? 2 years? He should have been fired 2 years ago. And they're asking the kind of questions that a journalist might ask. As a matter of fact, there was a journalist there from a local TV affiliate or a local paper, so not too completely indoctrinated yet. And she said, we've been calling, asking for some comments, but we couldn't get an answer, so here are the questions. How long has this been going on? Did you know about it? Were there any complaints made about this teacher in the past? If so, when were they? Who made them? And what action was taken against him? And if no action was taken against him, why was no action taken against him? These are the kind of questions that these kind of cockroaches cannot bear. And this is why if we had a news media, we wouldn't be in this trouble ever. But here's a journalist asking pointed questions of a public official. And they're like, they had no idea what was coming. None. But it defies belief that this guy could have had in his classroom an Antifa flag, a picture of Chairman Mao. He certainly walks around wearing hammer and sickle, stuff. He's got a hammer and sickle tattoo, by the way, over his heart, this big. I mean, it is just absolutely gigantic. And it defies imagination to think that this could have been going on for years without somebody knowing about it. But they did know about it. Of course they knew about it. And either they agreed with it or they decided they didn't want to make a fuss. So now a fuss has been made. And I remember going home just a couple hours ago. I usually go home between the end of shooting Virtue Signal and coming back for the Stratosphere Lounge. And I remember thinking, this is the first time in my memory that I can recall seeing the people who are putting this poison into our system running away. And I thought, it's not exactly Midway, but it is the Doolittle raid. It's a win, and it's a visible win. I have heard that James has, I think, might have been on the Mark Dice video. I have heard that he's got hundreds of these, hundreds. And this is the kind of thing that could actually really make a difference. When I saw how angry these people were, I thought, well, yeah, we've been this angry for years. Why didn't you get angry earlier? And then I realized, how could they know? All of this stuff that we talk about, it's suppressed. It's certainly not advertised, that's for certain. And we look at the decisions that so many Americans seem to make, and we think, how could they be so stupid? It's where this country's all about disagreement, but this isn't about disagreement. This is just, how can you be this blind? This is why I'm willing to write most Americans, not all of them certainly, but most of them I write them a pass. I have to just sit back and say to myself, how would they know? Not why didn't they know, but how would they know? In fact, how would they know that they didn't know? Right? If all you do is get your news from a news source like CNN, this is a credible news source, the New York Times, these are credible news sources as far as they're concerned. And the only reason we know that they're not, and haven't been for a decade, is because we are the victim of their ideological attacks. But if you're not, how would you know? And this was one of those moments where the actual American people got to see with their own eyes what's actually going on. And it wasn't a question of, hey, you know what, this communism isn't such a good idea, maybe we ought to back this down a little bit. It's like, how dare you put this into our kids? And that tells me that as across the board, this spring is getting about as compressed as it's going to get. That it's just simply not going to, we're not going to take a lot more of this. I know we've heard that before, but things like the California recall election, all of it, you can just feel it. It's just all this progressivism, all this wokeism, all of this stuff. I remember when I first heard the term, and I watched it go and increase. And in the manner of wars, by the way, the war is won, but the war is not over. And I am utterly convinced that this is their full court press and that they failed. And that they were doomed to fail from the beginning. That doesn't mean it's over tomorrow, and it doesn't mean it's over in 10 years, and I may be wrong. But the point cannot be made often enough. They are doing everything they can to shove their philosophy down the throats of people, and they are doing everything they can to make sure that people don't learn the truth about them and what they're talking about. And even with that unbelievable advantage of controlling all of the information that most people see, they still can't make the sale. And they can't make the sale because the product is crap. And they know it. They know it. And so if you ever wondered why can't they just leave the Boy Scouts alone? They can't leave anything alone. It all has to be destroyed. I've been in contact with several emails with our future overlord, Dictor von Doomcock. And I was going to be doing a show with him this week, but he's got a couple things busy, so we'll probably do a show next week. But Doomcock is right on target when he says they're destroying the country's myth. That's exactly what it is, and they are undermining it. And the stuff I want to talk about is why. Why are they doing this? And not so much why, because I know they're. If you want to tell people what to do, and if you want to take stuff away from people that earned it and made it and worked for it, then the United States of America is the only thing really stands in your way. Yes, I did see his remarks on Afghanistan. They were tremendous. He's becoming more of a conservative commentator than I am, and he gets 400,000 views per episode. But what Doomcock isn't talking about is how they do it, and how, when I say how they do it, this idea of get woke and go broke is a truism. I'm not aware of any exceptions to it. The NFL revenues plummeted, NBA revenues plummeted. Any movie like the Skywalker debacle, not only financial bombs, but put people off the product forever. All of it. So, Ghostbusters, Terminator, all these things that they've taken over, and so did Doomcock's especially upset because they're remaking The Rocketeer. All of it's failing. So the question that has to be asked is, how are they executing this? In other words, if get woke, go broke is true, and it is true, then why do corporations continue to do woke things? That's the question. If you're going to bankrupt your company by making a virtue signal statement, you're kind of beyond the realm of, well, this is because I want to feel good at a cocktail party with my friends. Now you got boards of directors to answer to, and so on. A large part of this is the people who run these companies telling their boards of directors, no, this is what the people want. This is what those kids want. The new kids are all of our future customers are all definitely into this woke thing. And that's just wrong. But why do they continue to have these catastrophic financial outcomes? How can they continue to survive it? And what is the lever? What is their lever? Now, we spend in this country, let's just up and down, but let's say $700 billion a year on defense. And so in a year and 2 years, you got $1.5 billion. I'm sorry, $1 trillion, my mistake. $1.5 trillion. A blockbuster Hollywood film, I think Lord of the Rings, all of it together, might have made a billion or 2 billion, something like that, maybe even 3 total across the board, including everything, maybe $2 or $3 billion. That's the all-time hit, right? And, Avatar is right around there. Okay, so think about the numbers here for a second. If I'm China or anybody else that doesn't like this country, and I've got money to spend, and I know that America's been building up its arsenal for decades. I'm not saying divert money from the defense to put into pop culture. I'm making the opposite argument. And you're China, let's say, and you've got $1 trillion in loose change. Do you try to catch up with America with its unbelievable head start in terms of time and money and technology and expertise and all the rest of it, including operational history, right? The U.S. Navy doesn't just have aircraft carriers. They have aircraft carriers, and they know how to use them. So do you try to catch that train, or do you take $1 trillion of Chinese money and figure out what that Chinese money could buy? In other words, if a blockbuster movie is $1 billion, right? Then $1 trillion of Chinese defense money buys 1,000 of those. 1,000 of them. This is the point, right? This is the point. The people that are making the decisions in Hollywood, for example, are making money regardless of what they put out. But I don't see any way that they can continue to, or this applies to the NFL as well. They cannot continue to do something this destructive to America that the American people don't want, and they don't want, and they're voting with their feet. And all of their revenues are going down, so why do they keep doing it? Somebody, somewhere, is filling that financial deficit. And that's just plain smart. I mean, it's really brilliant. What's the point of having 11 carrier strike groups if the sailors on them hate their own country? This is really how it goes, and this is very, very much in line with the long thinking, deep thinking, not only that Chinese culture has, but also that the communists have had. I mean, this long march through the institutions, that's what they called it. It started in the, probably late 50s, but by the time we're in the 60s, it starts going. And the first thing they do is they flood the journalism schools, because if they flood the journalism schools with journalism students who are indoctrinated with left-wing politics, then 10 years, 20 years on, the people making the decisions about what stories are going to get seen are going to be their people. And it just spreads out from there. So, Jeremy Boring made this point, and it's a really, really excellent point. When the antitrust legislation came about, and I don't remember when it was, I think it might have been I'm virtually positive it was after World War II. I genuinely don't know when it was. But somewhere in here, in American history, long before we had to worry about this stuff, long before the left, oh my God, there's a thing floating through the frame. It was determined in the U.S. that when if a movie studio owned movie theaters that ran their movies, this was a monopoly and it had to be broken up. So the direct financial line between people paying money at a movie theater and the studios that make the movies was cut. And everybody said, great, this is an antitrust thing, fantastic. But what that means is, functionally, is that the people that make the movies are no longer dependent on people going to movie theaters to get paid. See how that works? If you were to put out this stuff in the 30s or 40s, if you were to put out something that people hate as much as this woke product in the 30s, then what would happen is nobody would go and see the movies. And since that's where your revenue comes from, you'd be out of business. So people made pro-American movies. Movie studios in Hollywood made pro-American movies because that's what sold. It's what the American people wanted. Still what they want. But that connection has been cut now. And as long as Hollywood gets its money, it doesn't care where the money comes from. In fact, it's obvious to me and to virtually anybody else who listens to these people that they're in deep sympathy with this authoritarian communism. You know what's funny? I just realized it hadn't really occurred to me just yet. But now think about this. The reason that limousine liberals like Gavin Newsom and all the rest of it love communism is because communism allows them to live an aristocratic lifestyle in a way that you never could before in America. The economic structure and the entire philosophy of the people for the common good, this whole idea of communism, nobody's going to have more than anybody else, every single time it's implemented, does nothing but press down everybody else with the exception of the nomenclatura, the people who are on the inside, and those people live like gods. My wife remembers very clearly, and when she was a young girl in the last days of the Soviet Union, you'd go to the stores, there's nothing there. Comrade Brezhnev goes to a store, the store that Comrade Brezhnev goes to, there's always something there. And it allows them, strangely enough, although not that I'm shocked, it allows elitists to claim that they're on the side of the little guy, but at the same time, it gives them absolute power over them. So, that's what's going on. And I think that as usual, these people have smelled blood in the water and moved too fast. This is a full court press. We're in it right now. This is the first time in history that I'm aware of where the entire assault on a civilization is a mimetic assault, an assault on beliefs and narratives, and that the way to destroy the most powerful force in the world is not to face it, because you can't face it. The way to do it is to get underneath it, behind it, stab it in the back. And that's what we've been seeing. And so here we are. But nobody's buying it. I've said this so many times. It's just get a T-shirt on it, or just put up a card or something and save you all the time. If people were buying this stuff, it'd be time to go home. It'd be time to just go and live out our lives and just I'm just gonna watch the world burn and all of it. But no one is buying this stuff. And when I saw these parents at this school board meeting confronted with what this guy was saying, we got to scare the F out of these kids in order to turn them into communists. When I saw how angry they were at what you and I know has been going on for decades, I said to myself, this is the best news I've seen in 10 years. Because it shows that people are angry enough to rise up and do something about it if only they know what it is. It's one thing to keep people in the dark. If you keep people in the dark and then somebody manages to shine a light in there and they see what's going on and they're angry and they burst out, hooray. But if you keep people in the dark and they start to like the dark, then you're done. Then it's just over. But it's not over. So, I don't know. That genuine volcanic anger was tremendously liberating to me. It is hotter than an oven in here. Let me just, the air conditioning's already off, but let me just check the thermostat. Our lovely operations manager likes things warmer than I do, and I feel like I'm cooking. Hang on. Yep. It's on full heat, which is not conducive to Stratosphere lounging, ladies and gentlemen, at all. It's really kind of uncomfortable in here. Anyway, that's the world out there. So anyway, there's a lot. I almost said there's a lot to be grateful for, but you know what it is? Sometimes the things that just feel good is when you believe something really deeply and you find evidence that it's true. And this was one of those days. This was one of those real data points when I realized, no, it is true. The American people don't want this, and they just don't know. Because when they do know, they don't just get a little miffed. They get torches and pitchforks angry. And the most important thing here is, this is my big lesson, is that when the American people get torches and pitchforks angry, the left doesn't stand up and dig their heels in. They run like cockroaches. They just turn around and run. We're going to call a 5-minute recess. Things are uncomfortable for us here. So we're just going to go step out in the hall and have a little cup of coffee. We'll be back in 5 minutes. And they just out into the parking lot, and they're gone. So all we have to do is get the word out. And there you go. That's what I saw today. That's how I heard it. What a great guy. I think it's in the, actually thinking, in fact, I know it's in the podcast with Mike Rowe, which again, I'll get that link to Scotty and put up on the website. But I want to talk with Mike about elitism, because one of the reasons I admire Mike Rowe so much is that he, as I'm sure you know, he did a show called Dirty Jobs, and if I remember correctly, he said he did 300 dirty jobs. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means 300 episodes. If I recall correctly, he might have done 2 per episode or anything like that. But in any event, I was explaining to my lovely wife Natasha what it was about Mike Rowe that I admired. And I admired the fact not only that he personally got dirty, because he could have just produced the show, you know. It wouldn't have been a success. The show wouldn't have. But if you were determined to show, hey, there are people out there who do things that keep the thing running, he could have done that from the car. You know, he could have had a camera down on the guys in the sewers and could have interviewed them, you know, put together in post. But he didn't. He went down there into the actual honest-to-God sewers. And he crawled under houses and pulled out dead animals and did all of these horrible, horrible things. And I admire that so much. Because Mike understands, as do I, as does Doomcock, as do all... I mean, really, see, this is the thing. I don't have a huge audience, and I'm, you know, it is what it is. But, I'm not aware of anybody who spends as much time putting their ear up against the rails on the train, trying to figure out, you know, when that train is coming, because that's pretty much what I do, and I process a lot of information, and most of the information I process is non-political information. It's cultural information, and I am getting a real strong vibration coming through those rails now, real strong vibration. That we are now at a kind of a powder keg kind of a thing in a cultural war. When I say a powder keg, it's not like people are going to go grab their rifles. It's just that people are going to start showing up and shouting people down and demanding that these clowns get fired and doing what we saw happen up there in Sacramento in these videos. And there really is a chance, you know, that this, and I think a good chance, I think in fact a likelihood, that that since this whole thing is predicated on falsehoods and lies, and since their entire strategy is to hide the truth from people, if you can show people the truth in a way so they realize it is the truth, then the whole thing just comes down. It just comes down, boom, fast, and that's really good news. Yeah, Wizard points out we got elections coming up. We're going to find out. I'm still of a mixed mind, really, about whether or not there is a margin of victory that goes beyond their ability to cheat. I thought that was certainly the case, but seeing what I saw, I don't. It was like dial a vote. You just adjust it so that whatever votes come in, these are the votes that come out. Which is why, folks, the most important election that you will ever vote in is not for your senator or your representative, and it's certainly not for the president of the United States. We need to go out there and vote for the Secretary of State of your state and the Attorney General of your state. Those are the only two offices that matter. Because what we saw in 2020 was most of the states didn't have any problems. And the 5 states that did were the 5 states that stopped counting, the 5 states that overturned the trends, the 5 states that put this clown over the line. And those 5 states, not necessarily governed by Democrats, but the legal apparatus, I talked about this in Justice, the legal apparatus is owned by progressives. So if you have the Secretary of State of the state, and especially the Attorney General of the state, then you can do whatever you want to get away with it. If you replace those with patriots, don't even have to be Republicans or conservatives, just patriots who understand the system, then they can't get away with it anymore. And those elections can be won. There's not a gigantic turnout for Secretary of State or Attorney General when that position is up. If we just made conservatives aware of it, I think we'd take them all back. I think we'd get all 50 of them. But you got to follow the, you know, they say follow the money. In this case, it's follow the power, follow the corruption. So anyway, there it goes. That's that. Good to welcome Scott back. He's been gone for a couple weeks. Had an adventure that I'll let him either talk about or not as he sees fit. But in any event, he's back, and that's great. So we're going to continue to move to get some of these website issues resolved. Yeah. So I'm going to go to Facebook again, and then I think we'll go back to the BillWhittle.com page starting next week, and we'll do that as a routine. We'll just start there and get them all done, and we'll go to Facebook. But again, we've been having some problems with that forum, so I'm going to do this one more time, and it is ungodly warm in here, and I'm not going to be doing a super long show tonight, I'm sorry to say. Let's see what we got. Put this over here, like that. Come on. Come on. Damned things have a mind of their own. Right, okay. CP Tomes keeps asking, is anybody following Michael Jan? I mean, I saw the thing that I did the Scarred for Life thing on for Michael Jan. Are we talking about is Michael Jan okay? Because Michael Jan, like other real patriots, is over there trying to do something. His tweet, which was or whatever it was, which was the centerpiece of that Scarred for Life thing I did earlier this week, it's the whole argument. You know, we don't want you, we don't need you. To hell with you. So he certainly was over there, and I guess we're wondering if he's out. I'm sure he is. I hope he is. In any event, I'm really, really proud of the fact that Americans are just going over there and taking care of this, taking care of our own people, not only without the help of the government, but in spite of them, in spite of their best efforts to block them. That tells you a lot. Okay, so let's see what we got. I should probably refresh this. Yeah, I've been following for more than 10 years, too. I've been following Michael Jan since 2003 or 4. And I got that about the Discord. Thanks, Marisha. Let's see what we got here. Come on, load, you sunbee. Oh, and again, I owe this to Mark Dice, but I mean, I heard the news otherwise, but his take on it, you know, the woman who was the mother of one of those Marines who were killed in Kabul wrote something critical of the president who was responsible for that. And she had her Instagram immediately pulled down and all the rest of it. And when the fuss got loud enough, they restored it. And they said, oops, mistake. Sorry about that. Same way that all of them are mistakes. The same way that when all of it, they do the damage, then they go, oops, sorry. Sorry. Our mistake, our bad. Won't happen again today. But I am utterly confident that we are going to really bring that tower down. I really feel it. All right, let's see what we got here. I'm just going to take them in order. Eduardo Henrique, hello. Greetings, Bill. Wazer13er, hello, Eduardo. Pop culture this week. Have you ever heard or seen of the 1967's The Prisoner? Yes, I have. Patrick McGowan's character, number 6, struggles to defend his freedom and individuality while trapped in a village ruled by collectivism. The series had amazing lines such as, I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, or numbered. My life is my own. I am a free man. And if the whole world becomes as this village, I will be the first to live on the moon. Just thought we should be reminded of times when values of liberty existed on our culture, and hopefully will again. Best of luck and best regards. Thank you very much, Eduardo. It's good to hear from you. Yes, The Prisoner was a really strange show. It was not a real popular show because it was a difficult show. It was tough. The thing that everybody who saw The Prisoner remembers, and I have to say, it really was kind of brilliant because it was so bizarre that you couldn't really argue with it. If you tried to escape from the island, they didn't come at you with policemen or soldiers or even robot policemen. A gigantic, enormous balloon came and landed on you, and you're given the impression that these things just hold you in place and take you back. Were they called rovers? Is that right? And so you'd see somebody making a run for it all of a sudden on a beach, like this huge balloon. Ah! Okay. That's clever. However, that show made such an impression, I don't know how many of you know this, it made such an impression that when they did the close, they wanted a Beatles song, and I'm not a huge Beatles fan. My understanding wasn't it All You Need Is Love? I think that was it. They ended one of the few shows to actually end instead of just not come back next year. And so they really wanted this Beatles song, and needless to say, it's the most expensive music in the world, especially at the time. They just couldn't get it. And somehow or another, they got it to one of the Beatles. It might have been George Harrison or something. But in any event, the Beatles made like a special exemption for The Prisoner to use their music on that closing episode because they liked the show so much. And that was pretty cool. Does anybody know? So this is a great thing. It was like talking to, it's like talking to grandma. You ask a question and you get your answer 7 or 8 seconds later. I know nothing about Umbrella Academy. Is that in any way related? It seems like it's got the same general feel to it. It's essentially irrelevant. And the end credits for The Prisoner, the opening credits, featured a bicycle, a penny farthing bicycle with a huge front wheel, tiny little rear wheel. And at the end credits, if I remember correctly, this bicycle just kind of built itself. Okay. Nope, nothing to do with it. Got it. So, why a bicycle? And my understanding is that the people who produced the show said that because it represents the idea of the oppressors that run the island prison, that society is a machine and people are just parts. And by building this bicycle at the end of every episode, they would show, no, you're not a person. You're number 6. And that's all you are. And that's where collectivism takes you. I'm trying to think if there's an example better than this. I can't think of one. I think the most disturbing vision of collectivism, one of them anyway, is THX 1138. George Lucas made that as a student film, and that's what got him American Graffiti. And American Graffiti got him Star Wars. But then he remade it as a feature film with Robert Duvall. And THX 1138 does just, there's something about it, and a lot of it is Robert Duvall, that just nails it. Just this kind of, you are nothing. You are just simply a worker ant in a hive. You go back into your cell, you eat your algae paste, and then you get up tomorrow and you work for us. And everybody had their head shaved, and nobody's got a name. The hero is THX 1138. And that movie also had a lot of what we talked about with Mike Rowe, was when you don't have a huge budget, you have to be creative. And so in that movie, in THX 1138, they put him into a prison. But they didn't want it to be like a dungeon. They wanted it to be kind of like he was trapped in this strange place. So what they did was they did something, we talked about this too. The camera will allow you to do things that your eye will not do. And one of the things that a camera can do is black something out, just to black. They can also white something out. And so really brilliant was when THX is put into this kind of prison or camp or anything, it's like he's inside a ping pong ball. It's an endless expanse of white. There's no boundaries to it. He's just a little speck, and there's no sense of background, no sense of distance. The edge of that prison is infinitely far away, and it's really terrifying. Of all the things I like most about that movie, I actually like the resolution, because you get this great chase going. You got these 2 robot policemen on motorcycles chasing him, and he's racing through these tunnels, because his whole society's underground, because that's where you put hives. And just when it looks like he's going to be caught, the policemen turn around and just stop chasing him. And you find out that they've exceeded their budget. That the budget for capturing this renegade has been exceeded. The state has determined how much resources they're willing to spend on this, and it's no longer cost effective. So they just turn around. I thought, man, what a fantastic idea that was. but it really does give you a good sense of it. Another film that captures that sense of this, well, 1984, obviously, parenthetically, again, thanks to Mark Dice. Apparently, this professor had a poster for INGSOC on the wall, English Socialism. It's the graphic taken from 1984. He has on his wall something that he thinks represents English socialism, and it does, because it's a black hand shaking a white hand. But what he's basically saying is, I'm on Big Brother's side. You can't... Yeah, anyway. He's not employed anymore, not by them, and he's hopefully going to have a little trouble finding employment in the future as a teacher. So that's that. Let's see what we've got here. Eric Blake. Hey, Eric. Hey, Bill, seem to keep forgetting when you reschedule for Friday, but this week I guess it's all right with the Stratosphere. Anyway, serious topic, assuming we, not including me, haven't discussed this in the episodes I missed. I'm pretty sure it's all but a given that post-midterm Joe Biden will be impeached for his absolutely reprehensible and disgraceful behavior with Afghanistan. But say he's convicted and removed, Harris is now president. So now what for the remaining 2 years? Granted, if we get both houses, it's not like she can do much beyond executive orders. So with 2 years of President Harris without a pen, what would you say we ought to brace ourselves for? I'm glad you brought up Kamala Harris. Eric, it's always good to see you. I was explaining to Natasha what the American expression assassination insurance means. And Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's assassination insurance. For those of you who are not able to decode something quite that obvious, the joke is that when your vice president is going to be worse than the president, there's no point in getting rid of the president. So, I'll tell you what's striking to me, a bit surprising to me about Kamala Harris. And again, this is one of those ears to the rails kind of thing. I can't point you to a single story or anything. I just heard it, enough of it in enough different places to get the sense that this is actually coming true. But the people who work with her seem to say that she's not a pleasant person to work with. That doesn't surprise me at all. And she's not very smart, and that doesn't surprise me at all. But there is a kind of a weird sort of low buzz out there that she's suddenly realized that she's about to take the most demanding job in the world. And Kamala Harris strikes me as a person who didn't really think this through. I'm not joking. I'm as serious as I can be. I've heard reports from people who are close to her saying that she's all of a sudden like really quite nervous about all of this. And that doesn't surprise me because, well, I don't need to waste a lot of time talking about what I think about Kamala Harris, but even she must realize that she's way, way, way out of her league. And you know what it is? Here's what it is. I think this is it. It's so easy to attribute so much of this to evil intent, and there's a lot of evil intent out there, and there's a lot of high-level stuff going on out there, and I'm not that naive to pretend it's not true. But also, you do have to give ignorance and ambition and greed and arrogance its due. I think that Kamala Harris wanted the job because she's a social climber, and she's willing to get down and climb that social ladder. But I think what has happened in the last month is she thought that being president meant that she would have the same cocoon of invisibility that has always been for Democrats for the last 20, 30 years. And then Afghanistan happened, and then she realized that there are things that happen that even the news media can't suppress. Some things are so important and so big that not even the news media can suppress them. If there's another terrorist attack on the scale of 9/11, that's not something that CNN will be able to cover up, unlike laptops, let's say, or signatures on patents for specific types of viruses by certain individuals. I think it's dawned on her that that it's possible that this could not only go bad, but it could go bad, and she could be holding the bag for it, and she will be. And I'm utterly convinced that's what's going to happen. You know, when I talk about things that I think the left can use against me, I have to be careful, because I have to put a disqualifier in every sentence, because I've been taken out of context so many times that I want to be able to say, here's the rest of the sentence, not the rest of the speech. But when I'm talking about things that conservatives can misunderstand, I have to be triply careful about that. There is nothing about the Afghanistan situation that makes me happy. There's nothing about it that makes me go, oh, hooray, it makes Biden look bad. It's a catastrophe. It's an absolute catastrophe for this country. It's an unmitigated disaster. We're going to be paying for it for 100 years. But it is an indication of what reality can do. And I have always been on reality's side, and in the past 20 years of doing this, I've always believed that you can delay reality, you can give reality a rain check, but reality is going to come back sooner or later, and it came back here. And I think they're completely amazed. I actually do. I think they're really amazed. I really think that the people who whoever made the decisions to do this, I think actually believe the Taliban. That's how stupid I think they are. I really do. I think that's how stupid they are. And when I say stupid, I'm not talking about ignorant. I'm talking about the kind of stupidity that you have to have a relatively high IQ and certainly a very advanced education in order to achieve. I believe that they believed the Taliban because they're both anti-Americans, and the Taliban wants power, and we want power too. So swell, let's make a deal. Never occurred to them. Never really occurred to them at all that the Taliban might go back on their deals, because the Taliban is the enemy, and we've been kicking their ass for 20 years, and they don't like it. So, and that excuses people like Kamala Harris, who's obviously, you remember when, for those of you who are at advanced age as I am, remember when Dan Quayle misspelled potato, and it wasn't a miss. He said potato is Potatoe. Turns out there's no e on the end, but I didn't know that. I would have likely spelled it that way too. In other words, this is not like the way to spell potato is CAT. He's just minor mistake. They just never ever put that down. They ran with it again and again and again and again and again. Never ever dropped it. And then you see the kind of things that these people get away with, that they say and do, and yeah, it's just, yeah, whatever, Oh, we believed him. Going to be held accountable for this? Nope. I don't think, you know what? Isn't this interesting? The decision was made, and I know it was not made I'm virtually positive this was during Trump's presidency. But the Army decided to go retro and get back into the uniform style that they had during World War II, back when we won wars. And I suspect that a number of people in the Pentagon thought, if we dress like winners, we'll be winners. Because that's how American society works. If it looks like it's supposed to, then that's good enough. It doesn't matter what the optics of it are. Donald Trump was one of the most effective presidents in American history, and he was on our side, but he was unlikable, unless you were really on board with the whole idea of destroying the culture, which is destroying the establishment, I should say, the swamp, which doesn't make sense if you don't know what the swamp is. And frankly, if Donald Trump if somebody taken his Twitter away, he'd be president now, and we wouldn't be going through this. We'd be continuing to clean the swamp. But I never, this is what happens when you give people the cloak of invisibility. They get arrogant, they get stupid, and they make stupid mistakes. So I don't think So I just completely went off the rails here. Here's what I was going to say. Afghanistan has shown Kamala Harris that things can go south on your watch and that you will be held responsible for it. And there is no way that even the media and even the tech giants can cover up something that big. You just can't. And let's not forget, folks, that that is on the other side of the world. If there's a domestic catastrophe, somebody's going to be holding the bag for it. And it will not be lost on people that if there is another attack, we went 20 years without one, and then this happened. And then people like me will point out, well, the reason the last one happened was because we ran in Vietnam, and they thought we were weak and stupid and cowardly, and they were half right. The people that they could see were weak and stupid and cowardly. Rush has mentioned several times in the comment section that the Taliban's not mocking us, they're mocking leftists. That's pretty much it. Osama bin Laden assumed the whole country was made up of Hollywood limousine liberals. He thought America was a paper tiger, just punch it and it's just hollow. And it took a while, but he was soon disabused of that misconception. So, there we go. What I was trying to say about not being taken out of context is that all of this goes back to my constantly stated belief, which I am not happy about. Can we please just get this straight, right? I wake up every day hoping I'm wrong about things. It's not a fun way, really, to deal with things. I just really would love to be wrong about these things. I really would. But I've been saying that the only way you can get people to give up bad ideas in a world where they never get to see the consequences of anything is to give it to them. Well, they wanted Joe Biden for president. Now they've seen what Joe Biden for president can do and not do. And if you think Biden projects a sense of weakness, just wait till Kamala Harris gets up there in the first crisis of her presidency, because she is going to be president. Let's just get that over with. It's going to happen. There's no question about it. None. Zero. She is going to be the next president. And there's no way to prevent it. So if you think that Biden presents a sense of weakness not only overseas but to Americans, wait till the hyena gets a hold of things. Wait till she has to make an address to the American people and breaks into that laugh of hers, which she cannot control. It's a psychological tick. She's been doing that disarming female laugh her entire life. And that's what it is. It's disarming female laugh, right? It's like whenever she finds herself up against the ropes, and this has been her entire career, she will go into disarming female laugh. We saw something like this with Ford. Remember, whatever her name Chrissy Ford was during the confirmation hearings for Kavanaugh. Whenever she got on the spot, she got to be like, she gets to twirl her hair and started talking in her little voice and all this. So she can't control it. It's not something she can control. It's just she cannot talk. She can't even read a teleprompter without bursting into that laughter. And it's every time you see her laugh, and she laughs a lot, that's her deer in the headlight moment. When she goes to that laugh, that means she doesn't know what to do or say. I'm not an expert on body language, but that's pretty clear to me. I've seen this kind of thing before. I'm in trouble, and all I do is talk about equal rights for women and feminism, blah, 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 blah. But now I'm in trouble, so the first thing I will do is disarming female laugh. No. Not going to work. You're going to get a job where that's not going to save you. And we're all going to watch. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it'll get better, because this is this is what happens. Somebody asked me who I think the next president will be. I don't really know. I have a hope. That Donald Trump will anoint DeSantis as his ideological successor and heir to the Make America Great Again revolution, will campaign aggressively for him. And I think if that happens, it's a slam dunk. If it becomes a battle between the two of them, then the circular firing squad continues. But DeSantis has a record to run on, and he has virtually all of Trump's benefits and very few of his liabilities. But in order for DeSantis to be president in 2024, he's going to have to beat Trump in the primary, or Trump is going to anoint him, which would certainly be my preference. I'd love to see Donald Trump reelected again just to rub their faces in it. But, Donald Trump's not a spring chicken either in terms of age. And Donald Trump is a steel-trap mind. I haven't seen not the slightest indication of any signs of mental erosion on the part of Donald Trump. But, that election is still, 3 years away? And then you're talking 4 years after that? Comes a point when it's like, okay, yeah, elected for a third time, exactly. Now, Trump, DeSantis, Trump or DeSantis would be really quite a ticket. But in any event, and that's a great point, by the way. That's actually a really interesting point. Helios1776 said that he's the only president I've ever seen that looked the same going out as he did coming in. Yeah, let's give President Trump his rightful second term. I'm down with that, but I think DeSantis would have a much easier time winning. That would be my guess if I were to look at it just from here's how the tea leaves look. So we'll see. Moving on, Martin Archer. I'm boiling here. No matter how great people think the Constitution is, it failed. It failed to prevent the perverse amendments that led us inexorably to what we have now, socialist tyranny, and basically we've had that since LBJ. If I were writing a new Constitution, I'd put in protections against the size of the government, perhaps in relation to the population size. I'd also put in rules such as public employees not having the right to unionize, and perhaps something more that would guard against collectivist political parties. I don't know how, but I'd hope it would guard against specific amendments that brought about our present situation, this United States of America. What would you do? The Constitution provides remedies for all of these things, but if you're not going to listen to it, then it doesn't work. And so I don't see the argument that all we needed was additional amendments or additions to the Constitution to protect ourselves from these people when those protections are already there. If it's not that the Constitution has loopholes, it's just that they are just openly flouting it, and the people are not aware of what's happening, either because they don't get the information or they didn't get the education. They have a responsibility to get the education, but they don't even realize they've got the responsibility. If you talk to somebody today and said, are you familiar with the constitutional structure? Most of them would say no. And if you ask them why don't they know, they would say, well, why would I need to know? And there you'd be. You'd be at ground zero now. Now you'd realize where your problem is. So what do you say when somebody says, well, we're gonna essentially try to nationalize healthcare, and we're going to do it by executive order? Executive orders are for things like increasing the size of the White House staff so that we don't have to have Congress pass a bill to spend the extra, $60,000 a year. There it is. We'll see. My point is this, Martin. If you're looking for laws or statutes to protect us against the encroachment of the left, then you're looking in the wrong place, because those have already been there and new ones aren't going to make any difference. If the American people don't understand the way the country's structured and aren't willing to do anything about it, then that's that. You get what you deserve. And the remedy has always been, okay, if there's a guy in office who's a crook or is incompetent, then you vote him out of office. But what they didn't anticipate was the absolute elimination of an opposition press. I think that's really the one blind spot. I don't think they could have foreseen the idea that it would be technologically possible to manipulate information in that way. They had lying newspapers at the time of the revolution, needless to say, and virtually everybody had their own newspaper, and each newspaper were convinced that the other ones were lying. And by the way, if you really want to read something absolutely genuinely hilarious on that subject, Mark Twain wrote a short story called Journalism in Tennessee, I think. Excuse me, my God, what a pig. Yeah. It's just, he's a lying sack of this and so on, back and forth. But it kind of goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning of the show. I feel like they have spent all of their energy and all of their capital. I'm not talking about real capital, I'm talking about the left now. All of the accumulated capital that they've been saving for the big push. All of it. All of the racism accusations, all of the guilt that they've managed to manufacture, all of the resentment, all of it. They've been putting all of this power, this soft power, into a giant account. And now they're spending it going for broke. This is it. This is the power grab. We're going to do what we did with the election. We're going to do all these things. And they are running out of capital and guilt, and they haven't done it yet. They've compressed the spring, but they haven't made the sail. Again, if these people, just like the Islamic terrorists 20 years ago, if these people would just have waited for 20 years, another 20 years, there'd be no fight left. But they don't. And they simply see an opportunity and they go for it. And they always move too early. Always. Always, always. That's always our defense. And that's why I think I might have mentioned this on a show where I did something on this not too terribly long ago. And that is, if this country ever finds itself in another war, a real serious war, we'd better pray that we are the ones who get attacked first and that we really, really get hit hard in the nose, like we did at Pearl Harbor and like we did on September 11th. Because that historically is how this country moves to victory. If I was ever in a war with America and I wanted to lose that war, then I would start with an enormous, humongous victory over America. That's how I would start if I wanted to lose. And this is the thing people don't realize about America. This is kind of Hydra-like quality of it. There is a formula for turning decent, family-loving, religious, friendly, helpful people into cold-blooded killers. And that is to sneak attack us and punch us in the nose. And when that happens, all of a sudden, the America that bin Laden thought he knew, and the America that Tojo thought he knew, and Hitler thought he knew, and the America that these people think they know, suddenly becomes a different America. Which is how the cycle works. We're generally speaking easy to get along with. We don't want to run anybody else's lives. When people start intruding into the public space, we don't stand there with our, and form a barricade. We just kind of back up and say, all right, look, you've ruined this campsite, so we'll go to another campsite, and they'll follow you there. And then comes a point when they hit you hard enough that all of a sudden, not only do they stop backing up, they start coming at you. And that's what happened in that school board meeting up there. That's why I was so pleased to see it. That was Americans getting angry. And we're very slow to anger. Very slow to anger. In fact, we're too slow to anger. But if you can pull that off, you're not going to like the results. There was I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was relatively famous people, but I remember reading... first time I read Shelby Foote's Civil War trilogy, which I've read probably 5 or 6 times through now, I guess. And somewhere in the beginning of the war, there was a conversation between two friends who were on different sides of the Civil War. And the guy from the north said, you Southern people are very hot tempered, and you have initial victories because you got all this dash and you're outdoors people, and we are a bunch of greasy mechanics and all the rest of it. But he said the north, and now he's, in my opinion, speaking for the entire country, is like a giant boiler filled with cold water, and it takes an awful lot of heat over a long period of time to heat that water to boiling. But when it is boiling, it produces so much energy that you can't stop it. And that's what I see going on right now. I'm just watching the temperature of that water come up, and if you ever watch water boil, you realize it is a dramatic event. You're at 211 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's still water, and then at 212, it's not anymore, and that's what it feels like to me. Like that's like probably even a better example than the compressed spring. It's like we're just getting to that point, but the boil doesn't happen slowly. It's like it happens, and that's what I feel is going to happen. Kind of what I expect to happen, and probably what I hope to happen. I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to call it a night because it is excruciatingly hot in here. George Freeland, some of the earlier scripts for Star Wars show what's going on from Luke's perspective intercut with the opening sequence. Why was it a good idea to cut it out? Oh, yeah, I've actually seen that footage. There's footage of Luke with a friend, who I think has like a vestigial kind of a presence in the script that survived. But there's stuff of like Luke and it's really horrible looking stuff. He's like in a building that is supposed to be kind of like a sci-fi building, and his friend, is it Biggs? Wasn't Biggs? Biggs was the other pilot, right? It's not Biggs. It's some other guy. It's a guy with a mustache, I think, if I recall. Anyway, not Biggs. I know who Biggs is. Biggs is the guy who's destroyed 2 Death Stars. But this guy was somebody different, and he was not the guy, and it wasn't Biggs. So he has this guy, and they're talking about what's going on, and it's awful. And the reason you don't cut Luke's perspective, Luke's point of view into the opening scene is you haven't got. Oh, okay, right. Wedge Antilles. I'm thinking of Wedge. Got it. Okay, so this was Biggs. My mistake. My bad. Wedge is the guy who. Well, you can see that you can get those confused. Biggs, Wedge. Thank you. Wedge. So Biggs. All right. So I don't know who Biggs is or was. He got cut. But the stuff that I saw of Mark Hamill with Biggs was utter garbage, and it just slows the story down. Really slows it down. And you don't want the story to slow down now, and you don't want to split focus, right? I mean, this is the most important thing about telling this story correctly. This Luke Skywalker story is the same as Aragorn's story. It's the same as Arthur's story. It's the same as Superman's story. You have to. This is a story about the transformation that occurs to the main character, and everything you do to diffuse that weakens the story. There are some kind of stories where you need a lot of differing characters, and you get into these kind of, character comedies or power plays or mysteries or whatever. Something like this is very simple, and anything you do to complicate it makes it worse. So anything that delays Luke Skywalker from seeing that hologram and getting into the Millennium Falcon is a waste of time and making the movie worse. And you're not supposed to know much about this guy. And the reason you're not supposed to know much about Luke Skywalker in the beginning of the first movie is because Luke Skywalker doesn't know much about Luke Skywalker in the beginning of the first movie. It's because he's not there yet. He is just plain raw clay. The reason that Luke seems like such a sallow and kind of, whiny crybaby is because he's a sallow and whiny crybaby. That's what he is. And if he's not that in the beginning, then his transformation doesn't make any sense and it doesn't work, which is why Rey is so pathetic a character. She doesn't have to work for anything. It's just given to her. So if she never fails, why should we root for her? If she didn't have to work for it, why should we Why should we support her? I mean, that's really it, right? I mean, this is why the socialists and the communists hate rich people. They hate rich people because they think that rich people just got hit by the wealth fairy. That the angel of wealth flew over the land and alighted on certain windows and went ding, you're going to be fortunate, and ding, you're going to be rich, and that's how they see it. It's just plain luck. When you show people who have that attitude about wealth, that he's got all this and I've got nothing, when you show them how hard people who have things like that work and the number of hours they put in, then they get a lot less covetous, because you can offer them the same deal. Yeah, if you want to work 14, 15 hours a day, you can have your own company. Absolutely. Really? Yeah, that's the price. Now, needless to say, there are people out there who are second and third or fourth generation rich kids, never had to work for anything, and that money that they start out in life is dissipating. They're going to spend it. It's not going to be made. But all of the people that became wealthy did it through tremendous hard work, unbelievable hard work. Most people who are covetous of other people's money are not willing to do the work necessary once it's been pointed out to them that this is not just a random thing, which is why I find this term fortunate is an extremely bad term. And we keep using it, and I find myself using it. When you talk about somebody who's poor, you can't say they're poor anymore. You say they're not as fortunate as we are. I understand that you start out from different places in life, and as a guy who didn't have four figures in his bank account until he was 46, I know what it's like to be on the other end of that equation. But you are not... I wonder how many people who could be shown, no, you can't actually get there. This is what you have to do. I wonder how many people would turn it down. I bet you most of them would walk away from it. I really, in fact, I know it. If you went to all the people who are crowing the loudest about how rich people have this and rich people have that, if you said to them, here's the deal, you can be rich too, and we'll set it up for you. You're just going to have to put in 14 hours a day for the rest of your life. I think virtually all of them would say, no, thanks. Give me your stuff. You work. I'll stay here. That's what it's all about. That's why you don't... that's why this whole thing is based on envy. And when something is a gift, like a handout from the government, if it's a gift, then you want more. If you saw somebody working hard for that money, you would not begrudge them the money. At least most of the people wouldn't, anyway. I'm going to do the last one here, and then I'm going to kind of call it a night. I'm just boiling in here. Okay, so this is William Salisbury's fourth attempt. Sorry, William, we try to get to there before that. Bill, question to follow. Warning, it is a bit long. No problem. 4 attempts, you've got the floor. First, thanks for reading and applying to my question a few weeks ago. I look forward to your Unreal series. Question, have you thought of putting a village scene into your video you're making to give a backstory? Like, heroes, we need your help. The minions from the decrepit caverns DC and the swamp keep attacking. They burn all our civic buildings and loot our stores. Antifa and BLM, please venture forth and destroy the evil. After, thank you, heroes, you have saved us. Please take the small sum to further your noble quest. Paid to BillLittle.com and membership or something like that. William, you have the script is written in such a way that is, fortunately, not needed. Because a scene like that slows things down. I've already got a 3-minute opening scene, which is much longer than I wanted it to be, but I'm going with it because I have to establish the characters. I have to establish what they're doing and who they are relative to each other, and what we've got pretty much does that. But when they get into the castle, there's no question about what this is. They come into this treasury room. There's just gold everywhere, and it says there's not this much gold in all of Rome. It's just one of thousands of rooms like this in the castle. Oh, you lie. Thou lieth. No, it's all been taken from... Do they raid caravans from distant Araby? No, they take it from local villages. That's impossible. People working for their entire lives couldn't produce one of these gold coins. That's right. It's the output of 3 or 4 lives. And there's gold coins everywhere. And that's when I say, what do I say? 'Tis the greatest villainy since the making of the world. Something like that. It is. So, I think that kind of thing. First of all, since this is a kind of a screenwriting question, it's one. There is a version of a story where the villagers ask for help, but generally speaking, having them ask for help is to lower the virtue of the person who's going to do the heroic stuff. Usually, the way this works is the heroes witness some horrific injustice, and out of sympathy for the people who are being murdered or pillaged or burned or all three, then they go off on their quest and do it. Because this is not a drama in the same sense that it's a political satire, each one of the following scenes has built into it the motivation for it. When we run into academics, they're just like these slugs, and Zoe is identifying them as they come out because he's been in the castle before and I haven't, and he says these are purveyors of lies to children. Okay, so I think on balance, we'll need to take it as a whole, and that's where I think we're going to go with that. I'm still planning on releasing it in 6 segments. The final scene of the first segment is not in the animation that we have so far. It's when they see this incredibly imposing, horrific-looking Gothic castle, and they basically, they step onto this long bridge, and then big flaming letter D opens up in the sky, and what fresh hell is this? And Zoe says, the worst kind, brother, the very worst kind of all. And that is a little bit on the nose, but it's there's you've heard it 1,000 times, but it is one of the greatest expressions in the English language in our modern society, because our mythology is pop culture. Mythology, our cultural myth is Star Wars, Star Trek, and so on. That's why it's being undermined. But because it's our cultural lifeblood, there's an expression that transcends the movie business, and that expression is cut to the chase. Let's cut to the chase. I use that all the time, and for those of you not familiar with the origins of it, what it basically says is, we are now, in our screenplay, we are getting so bogged down with all of this exposition, and we got the guy going here, and it's just cut to the chase. Cut to the chase. We will know what's going on when we see it. Cut to the chase. Get all of this dialogue, all of this exposition, just get it out of there. Cut to the chase. The action will tell the story, and not the words, not the verbiage. And that's why that's such a profoundly good expression, and probably the best advice you could ever give a writer, especially a screenwriter, is cut to the chase. Amarusha asked, could you get Mike Rowe to read a few lines for the series? I don't have to ask him. He asked me if he could be a part of it on camera. So, strangely enough, I don't know if I have a position of a role for Mike Rowe, but I do have one for Doomcock, if he's willing. But as far as the colonies go, yeah, I have a long conversation lined up for Mike about that, but that's a little bit further downstream. So, yeah, did I get that pretty much covered? I think I did. Let me see. Yes. So, and by the way, when you're dealing with a relatively short project, any time you spend is, in other words, if I spend 3 minutes of exposition on a 5-minute movie, is different than spending 3 minutes of exposition on a 3-hour movie. So, while I'm always grateful for suggestions and stuff, I just, since we're talking about movies as part of the show and story writing and all the rest of it, I think it's much better to just get into it and show it, and we'll take it, pretty much from there. Tempting. Oh yes, no, I haven't talked to Overlord about this yet. but I'm quite convinced. And strangely enough, I had a part written into the script long before I contacted him. And then all of a sudden I realized, my God, it'd be perfect. It'd be perfect for that. So we'll see. All right, gang, it's an hour and 15 minutes, about an hour and a half for, we did a little sideshow before we started recording. What is that number? Where does it say minus 258? Oh, that's the playback on this. I see. Yeah, record time, 1 hour, 30 minutes. That's what I'm looking for. All right, so I think I'm going to call it a night here, Gangaroos. And thank you very much for everything. It's been great. And it's especially fun to be able to bring other content providers into this family, and for me to get involved with their family too. He gets a lot of views, and he's earned them. And I've watched this whole thing evolve over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, and constantly leads me to the belief that if I were just standing outside with an iPhone, probably get 7 or 8 times the number of views I get. So anyway. I think that will do it. Yes, hail Vectron. That can't be said often enough. And I don't remember who said it, but the line about we showed a little bit of animation before we started recording. Whichever one of you said it was a queer wolf wins the internet for the night. There's 2 in-jokes for you. So that'll do it. Thanks again for the support as always. Thanks again for the members that make the show possible. And we will see you right here next week on the Stratosphere Round Trip.